welcome back to Julie's Village. I'm glad you're here. Today I have my good friend with us. This is my friend Jen Jones. And Jen and I were in the same program at Brigham Young University, Idaho, when we were getting our undergraduate. We were both in the early childhood special education program. And then we went our separate ways, and she ended up doing her student teaching during my first year of teaching in the Western Idaho area. And so we reconnected and were able to be just a support for each other as we got started with our careers. And it's been fun to watch Jen as she's continued to grow and learn and do great things. I'm excited to have her tell you about what she does. But I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you, Jen, if you want to introduce yourself. Tell us about you and your family and what things you've done.
Thank you, Julie. I'm so excited to be on your Julie's Village. I'm honored to be a part of this community. So as you said, we were undergraduate students at BYU Idaho together, and once I finished my student teaching, I started teaching school in the Boise School District. Um, and I was teaching special ed preschool. So children that were 3, 4, and 5 with exceptionalities. And I did that for a while. And then I decided to go back and get my master's degree in early childhood education to learn how I could be a better teacher. And then I decided I wanted to try teaching general education for fun, just to see. So I taught first and second grades and really enjoyed that. And then I decided I wanted to go back to school and get my PhD and focus in special education. And from there, I taught at a university in the Northwest for a bit and then came back to the West. And this is let's see, I'll be starting my 5th year in higher education, but my 4th year at BYU Idaho. So that's a little bit about my professional background. I am also a mom. I have 3 young children, as you can see, a 2-year-old and 1-year-old twins, and they are all boys. So they
So
keep
you're
us,
busy.
yes, very busy at home and in addition to work. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, I just think it's fun that you started at BYU Idaho as a student and it's come full circle and now you're there as a professor. That's just
Yes.
a neat thing to have gone at that, I guess, like I said, just completed that circle. So
Yes.
Jen, I want to ask you just a little bit about your time as a preschool teacher. And as a preschool teacher and as an elementary school teacher, thinking back on your schooling, are there things that like stuck out to you that really helped you as a preschool and elementary school teacher?
Definitely. I think the biggest takeaway from the schooling that I applied in my classroom was the idea that the most powerful impact I could have on students was the relationship that I built with them. And that seemed to solve many behavior management issues, anything that felt hard or challenging about working with a student. It always came back to my relationship with that student. And if I hadn't put in the time or the effort to build that, things did not go well. And so I think that I really just came to understand that kids, for the most part, really do, I think, want to make you happy and they want to make good choices. The way that they do that, sometimes it's hard to tell that that's what they want, but that relationship is so fundamental to everything that we do as teachers.
Are there some things that you did to help build a relationship with them?
I think that it's nothing huge. I think it really is the day-to-day little interactions that you have. So when my student lost a tooth and I happened to notice and I made a big deal about it and said, "Wow, you lost your tooth," or they got a new haircut or a new pair of shoes. Just the daily things that I would notice about them that helped them understand and know that their teacher actually did care about them and not just about how they acted in my classroom.
I love that. I think we just have this human desire to be seen, and noticing helps them to know that you saw them. Thank
Yeah,
you. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier. Were there other things that you thought of from your schooling that helped you, or was that the big one?
that for me is probably the big takeaway. And I try to help my students now to take that away. And it applies to my college students as well. If I build a relationship with them, then we can work together and we can solve problems. So that's a life lesson.
Yeah, that's a good point. That again, it doesn't matter what age we are, it's just a human need
Yes.
to be seen. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, um, you started off in preschool, and I think for any parents watching that have a preschool age child, some questions that might come up are just about that whole screening process. Oftentimes, in order for a child to qualify for an IEP in preschool, either they've come through that an IFSP, that those program or those plans, or they go through this screening process. Do you mind explaining a little bit about what the screening process is at the preschool level?
No, I don't mind. I'm happy to. So each district does things a little differently. I'll speak to my experience with the district that I taught in. So once a month, I believe, we would have a screening for any parent that had a concern about their child that maybe they weren't developing as they should, or if maybe a doctor had said, "Hey, you should take your child to this screening." And at the screening, we had several early childhood educators set up at different stations, and we would welcome the families, welcome the child, and then kind of they go through a series of centers, might be a good word to describe it. So one center might be focused on their fine motor development. And they would ask, can you pick up the pencil? Can you copy this circle? Can you cut this line? And another center might be focused on cognitive development. And so they would ask questions about different concepts that preschoolers should know. So basic shapes, colors, counting, things like that. And each of the domains would be covered in the screening. So there would be a language center. There'd be a social emotional center, a gross motor center, and then once the children had gone through that, the way that our district did it was they would take those results to a team and they would just score it right there at this screening. They would come up with the scores, and if the child scored in a range that was lower than expected for their age, they would then refer the child to the school district for further testing. If the child scored well in the range of what we call normal development, then they would give those results to the parents right there and just say, your kid's doing great. They're right on track. keep doing what you're doing. So that we tried to get through the screening with each family. I think our goal was to do it in less than an hour from when they arrived to when they were walking out the door with the results, knowing if their child was on target or if they would be referred for some additional testing.
And it sounds like if they were referred, then that would also happen at the district level, like maybe the district office would be where they would take their child for that testing, and then from there a determination would be made if they were qualified for the preschool program or not.
So we had an eligibility team that did all of the testing, and I believe they did it at kind of our early childhood center that we had. Um, and so it was made up of professionals that maybe had been teaching in the classroom for many years and then decided they wanted to do something else. And so they became a part of this eligibility, and their job was just to do the assessments.
Great. Thank you for explaining that process. So
Yes.
if a parent watching this has concerns or they're wondering, is this something I should do with my child? Are there any maybe like thoughts or pointers that you would have on things to look for to maybe be an indicator that yeah, you should consider bringing your child to a screening?
Yes, that's a great question. So my first thought is that there is nothing to lose. I didn't mention this, but the screening is free. Parents do not have to pay for this at all. And so the only thing you're losing is 1 hour in your day. But my answer to that would be if you have any concerns about any area of development in your child, maybe they have a friend that they play with, and you've noticed that their friend um, talks in full sentences and they're 3 years old, and your child is using one word utterances like no or stop or help. Any area where maybe you've noticed that your child um, is doing things differently than their peers that they play with, their friends. I can give you an example from my own child, my oldest child, Johnny, who when he was about 18 months, he wasn't talking at all. And I knew from my schooling that babies should start talking around the age of 1. And so when he turned 1, I thought, oh, okay, maybe he's just a little slower. And then we went along, and now he's 15 months. Oh, still not using any words. Now he's 18 months, still not using any words. And so I had him evaluated through the infant toddler program, which is a similar screening process to what we do for children that are ages 3, 4, and 5. And so I just think there's nothing to lose, because if your child is great, you're going to hear, oh, they're doing wonderful, keep it up. Or if they are delayed, then they're going to do some further assessments to determine the best way to help them. And my son Johnny did qualify. He was in the second percentile for his expressive language. So that's very low for his age. And he started receiving some speech therapy to help him learn to talk.
You kind of mentioned this a little bit, alluded to it a little bit. There's nothing to lose, but what is there to gain? So if your child does qualify, what would be the purpose of maybe starting now instead of just waiting till kindergarten or just hoping they catch up?
Yes, that's such a great question. I think that there's definitely um, the thought process, and I had it myself, that we could just wait and see. what happens with Johnny. We could give him 6 more months until he turns 2 to see if he starts talking. Um, because maybe he will. Maybe he's just a slow talker, and that is the way that he was made. And I did entertain that thought several times. And as my husband and I kind of talked about, do we want to refer him? We talked about kind of the pros and cons. And ultimately, what I felt we stood to gain was help and services that were not going to harm Johnny's development in any way. And my thought was, and they will probably help him even if he is just a slow talker and there's nothing else going on here. Um, we know that early intervention is key. Young children's brains before the age of 3 are malleable so much that the earlier that you can start these services, the better the outcomes will be. And that doesn't mean that you can't make a difference after your child turns 3. You definitely still can. But that malleable brain is primed for these interventions that will change the trajectory of children's lives. So I I really do. This is what all of the research shows about early intervention. And I really do believe that earlier is better. And if nothing else, you're going to help your child with their development, and then they're going to get caught up to where they should be. And then they'll just have a great solid foundation and be ready to succeed for the next phase of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to point out that not all children will catch up to where they should be, but even just getting closer, anything you can do to help them get closer.
Yes.
I think we've all lived through things that we've struggled through, and help can be invaluable. And if we can do that for kids, why not? Why not do that for children and help them just get closer again to where the expected is, so that as new expectations are placed on them, they're that much farther ahead and closer to being ready to
Yeah,
meet them.
that's a great clarification.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts there, Jen. And um, I was just thinking about you just mentioned briefly your son Johnny and this experience with him. I'm wondering if you don't mind sharing just a little bit more about your son and I guess the road you've been on with him.
Sure. Yes. So I shared the beginning of the journey where we started noticing that he wasn't talking, and so we had him screened, referred, and tested for the infant toddler program that is offered in Idaho. And kind of alongside that concern that we had, he we noticed that his right eye would sometimes separate from his left eye like a lazy eye. And it
Okay.
didn't happen a lot. It was so infrequent that I didn't think anything of it. And this started to happen around age 1, right around, I would say, his first birthday. We started noticing kind of the separation of that right eye. And at that time, we didn't really do anything about it. We just and in hindsight, I think, man, why didn't I take my own advice and jump on it as soon as I saw something? But experience is the best teacher. And so we kind of just waited. When he was about 18 months, my mom actually noticed and said, "Did you notice that Johnny has a lazy eye?" And I said, "Yes, I noticed that. I think a lot of people have lazy eyes. It's probably not a big deal." And she really wanted to take him to the eye doctor. to have it checked out. And at the time, I was about 7 months pregnant with the twins and still working. And so I was a bit overwhelmed and I said, go right ahead, take him and let me know what they find. Not expecting much. And she took him to an optometrist who um, said, there's something going on and I'd like to refer you to an ophthalmologist. And so we went to an ophthalmologist, which I didn't know the difference. So an optometrist is an eye doctor who has gone to schooling to become an eye doctor. An ophthalmologist is a doctor. So they've gone to medical school and then they specialize in the eye. So I
Okay.
didn't know there was a difference, but we took him to the ophthalmologist who then referred us to a different ophthalmologist who specialized in retinal diseases. Long story short, we were referred down to a special doctor in out of state in Utah, and Johnny was diagnosed with a really rare eye disease called Coates disease. And it's so rare that no one in Idaho they knew what it was, but they said if you want treatment for this, you're going to have to go to Utah
Oh, wow.
because he's so young. The average age of being diagnosed with Coates disease is around 8 or 9, and it's more common in boys than girls. But basically, what had happened was the blood vessels in Johnny's eye had leaked. Um, they had grown so quickly, quicker than they should, and they had leaked enough fluid that the retina, which is in the back of the eye, had started to detach. And when your retina completely detaches, you are blind. It causes blindness. And so he was diagnosed with Coates disease right around right around 18 months. So it was a big shock. I remember just being kind of in a daze. I had also just given birth to my twins. So I just felt really numb for a little while about his diagnosis. Um, and just kind of struggling to process what it was because it was so unknown. So reading online, trying to figure out what the treatment options were, figuring out the worst case scenarios. That's what I do, which is terrible, because he's doing great, and we've started some treatments with the retinal surgeon that we go to see in Utah, and he gets injections in his eye every 3 to 4 months, which help slow down the growth of the blood vessels. So at this time, he doesn't have any vision in his right eye, but um, we don't know what will happen in the future. And I think that one of the things that I'm still learning about getting a diagnosis that kind of throws you is that you can't look 10 years down the road. And that's what I was doing. I was looking 10 years down the road, and I was thinking about all the things that he would never be able to do because blind in his right eye. Truly, there are not that many things that he will not be able to do.
Hmm.
He can't be a pilot. That's okay. Uh, he probably isn't going to be a sports star. His depth perception is not great. So he's probably not going to be a NBA player or any sort of sports rock star. That's okay. But what I've learned is that you have to just go one day at a time. You just have to think about what can you do today and get through each day and try not to worry. about what the future holds.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm curious as you talked a little bit about this. I'm curious as a somebody who has a background in education and exceptionalities, how did that impact this process for you? Do you feel like it kind of gave you a leg up, or do you feel like you were feeling like you were just on even playing field with any other parent who has an experience like this?
I think that I don't know how to answer that question because it's really deep. So my thoughts are, in a way, it did give me a leg up because I knew that there were services available
Mm,
to children with visual impairments. And so knowing that the resources exist, I believe did give me a leg up from parents who don't know or haven't heard of early intervention. The fact that I knew exactly who to call when I was concerned about his speech, um, and that uh, and I didn't even mention the vision. When we started this process, it was just about his speech, and then he got diagnosed with his visual impairment. um but in a I guess on the other side of the coin, maybe knowing too much can be a little dangerous because I, as I stated, I tend to look for worst case scenarios. And so I'm thinking down the road way farther than I probably need to. So, but overall, I think that probably my background helped to know where to go to get the help that Johnny needed and will need as he gets older.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, as you think about the or as you talked about the services that he received. So he was receiving speech services, and then he received this diagnosis of the coats. Did that change anything with what you were receiving? Did that so if another parent finds themselves in a similar situation, maybe not the same thing, but there's already one difficulty, they've already got services in place, and then you get more information, you find something else is going on. How does that change what you're receiving or your day to day?
Yes, it did change the services that he received. So he continued to receive speech therapy through the infant toddler program. In addition, they added a service provider to his IFSP who was they call it a TVI, a teacher of the visually impaired. They usually just say TVI, and it's a whole lingo, and I had to look it up, and oh, that makes sense. So this is someone who is a an expert in teaching and working with children with visual impairments. So she was added to Johnny's IFSP, and she would consult and continues to consult with me. She's not a direct service provider, so she doesn't directly work with Johnny the way that the speech therapist does, for example, but she gives me tons of resources and ideas of how to help him strengthen his left eye because his left eye is working overtime since his right eye is not working at all. So she really consults more with me and gives me ideas of what to try, as well as resources to help me with working with Johnny. That was the biggest difference after he received his Coates diagnosis, was the addition of the TVI support.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's important for parents to know that these plans can shift and change as your child's story shifts and changes as their needs change, that these plans will change with them. You're not locked in. And sorry, we made a plan for speech, so that's all he gets. But
Yeah.
that, yeah, as you presented the team with more information, they were able to provide more information about resources and connect you with those resources. So thank you. I also wondered as I listened to your the beginning of your story, in that recognizing that there was a lazy eye. I wonder too if you've worked so much with so many children who have some things are typical development and some things are fall into that atypical. And I wonder if that partly made you a little bit slower to respond, in that
Mm.
there's more of a comfort, I guess, with those things that are atypical. And I think as professionals in this world, sometimes we have this maybe this mentality that it's we don't need to make a big deal about those things that are outside of the typical, because you just work with it. You just keep going, and you just meet people with where they're at. And if that kind of can, I don't know, slow that process for us, or maybe the same kind of alarm bells aren't going off. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what I was taught in school and what I noticed in my own teaching in working with young children is that development is always a range. It falls within a range. So we say a child should start talking when they're 1, but really there's a range of typical development. And some children might start talking at 9 months, and some might start talking at 15 months. And that's all within the range of typical development. And so I think that, yeah, the noticing his eye, I remember actually talking to my husband about it one day before we had him diagnosed, and we were like, what do you think is going on? Like, why do you think his eye is separating? And we just were like, well, he's young. Probably the muscles in his eye, they're just not strong enough yet. And, just kind of thinking, yeah, that makes sense. We'll just give him some time to develop those muscles. And I'm grateful that my mom was very proactive, because I think, what if I didn't have someone that was really proactive and saying, let's just get it checked out. Kind of going back to what we talked about with getting your children screened if you have any concerns. There's just nothing to lose. And with a disease like what Johnny has, it's progressive. So the longer you wait to diagnose and treat, the worse it can get. So in a case such as this, I'm so grateful that my mom said, let's just take him in and just make sure that everything is okay, because it would have been really hard if we had not done that. And I don't know what would have happened, but I'm grateful that he's receiving treatment now.
Yeah, thank you. I think something else that stood out to me as you were sharing your story is that you, like everybody else who finds themselves in a situation like this, like Johnny was not your only element in life. He was not your only story, not your only piece. And there's so much to our lives. You were working, you were pregnant with twins, you had your twins during this process of getting him treatment and figuring all of that out. And that's a lot to manage all of that. And I think that's an important thing for parents to keep in mind, is that as you experience things with your children, that your story continues, and there's more around what is happening in your life, that and you're just doing the best you can, and that's good to do what you can. Thank you for being willing to be vulnerable and share all of that with us. I'm curious as you have moved forward, as you are trying to support Johnny, if you have found that there are things that have been especially helpful for you.
Yes. Yoga. Yoga for me is the way that I keep grounded, and it's my self-care. So my husband is incredibly supportive and watches the three boys, does bedtime on Thursday nights so that I can go to my 1 hour yoga class. And yoga is all about being present in the moment and not just being present and being okay with whatever is happening. That's actually been very helpful for
I
me.
I love that. How have you found that that translates over to then, so you have your class, is it just nice to be in that 1 hour class, or do you see the benefits carry over?
That's a great question. I think ideally I would love to have that carry over into my day-to-day interactions. That's something I think I'm still working on, but there are times when, for example, just stopping what you're doing and taking deep breaths like you learn to do in yoga is so grounding. And you can do that at any time, at any place. So for example, when my twins are screaming and Johnny is having a meltdown and I'm feeling really overwhelmed with life, I can stop and take 3 deep breaths and then deal with the deal with what's in front of me and try to be okay with what I'm dealing with.
I love that. I wondered too, as you were sharing, that for somebody who like yoga's not their thing and that's not what they do,
Yeah,
um, what do you see maybe as the benefits of just even having that break, just that time away? Do you see that having benefits that could potentially carry over?
definitely. Yes, I think that anytime you can recognize and regulate your own emotions, you can better care for those that are not able to regulate their emotions. So this is something I'm really learning with Johnny right now because he is not yet able to self-regulate. So we have a lot of tantrums and meltdowns. And if I can kind of zone in and find my own regulation, even if I feel like screaming at him, if I can stay calm and take those deep breaths and be present, I can help him work through his own challenges, his own um, state of difficulty. And I kind of think of it as like as he goes this direction and escalates, I, at least I stay here, but ideally I go the other direction. And as he gets louder and screams, I talk softer and maintain that calm to help him learn this is how you regulate.
Have you learned, is there a connection between the screaming and the tantruming to either the coats or the language development?
Definitely the language development. That was probably the main cause of most of the behavior was that he couldn't communicate. And um, I would do that too if I wasn't able to tell you what I wanted or what I didn't want. So as he learned to use more language and um, express himself, there's been less of the screaming and um, tantrums and those things. So definitely a connection with his language development. The coats is very hard because up until a few months ago, he couldn't tell us anything about his eye. And so he really didn't know what was going on. Now he has some language, which is really helpful because he can say, I, ow.
Mm.
And I know what that means. Oh, your eye is hurting. So it's really helpful to have even just those two words, I, ow, so that I can then say, okay, eye is hurting. What can we do?
I I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that that is such a powerful lesson, just that right there, the fact that as we are able to give children the power to communicate in some way, that that just it opened up his world and it opened up your world and made this relationship easier for both of you and
Yes,
probably for everybody around him. It brought some peace to him being able to just say what he's thinking, feeling, experiencing. Thank
absolutely.
you. So I you've shared with us that this time away going to yoga is so helpful for you. I'm going to bring in something that I know just from you personally in conversations that we have, but I think it's important for other parents to know as well is that as you've shared things with me, I've recognized that you have built a team, that there is a team around you. You're not doing it alone. You've mentioned your husband
Mhm.
here and also your mom, that she was the one that recognized something was going on with Johnny and pushed for that help. But she, from things you've shared with me, she's helped in other ways too. And I'm just curious if you wanted to speak to that at all, that what difference it can make to have a team and who that team might consist of.
Yes, this aligns perfectly with the name of your YouTube channel, Julie's Village. Truly, it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm so grateful for my village, which includes my mother, my father. Um, every morning, Johnny gets to go up to Grandma and Grandpa's house and spend a couple of hours just playing with Grandma and Grandpa so that I can get the twins up and ready for the day. That is such special time for him and such a break for us. So, yeah, they are huge members of our team, as well as all of the professionals that he works with. So, the early intervention, my service coordinator, his speech therapist, he also gets some private speech therapy once a week. And he's also been doing some occupational therapy to help with his self-regulation and some sensory issues as well. Um, so all of the service providers that have been helping him learn how to survive and not just survive, but how to become his best self. My colleagues at my job are my work family. Truly, they are incredible human beings and always asking, how's Johnny doing? How's his eye? How was his last surgery? They're a huge part of the team. Um, as well as just my friends, you, Julie, people that I've known for years that are connected, maybe not geographically, we don't live close, but still asking how I'm doing during difficult times and keeping connected with me. Um, so lots of people on our team, and can't imagine how we would have made it through without the entire team.
Oh, I really, again, I appreciate you saying that because I feel like you pointed out some really good things there. That yes, there's the team that helps you work directly with Johnny, and that is an important part. But then also, and another, I guess, element or still an important part is just those people that you can go to talk to and to share. And even though they're not necessarily working directly with Johnny, they still provide you with something that you need. And that is an ability to again be seen and be heard, just like you do for your students, as others do that for you. It it makes this situation livable and gives you the support you need to keep going. So thank you for highlighting that, for pointing out those additional people. You shared these things that have helped to make this easier to that were helpful. What are some things that you have found that have been maybe especially difficult through this experience?
I think what you mentioned earlier about how there are so many things that I feel like we were juggling at one time around the time of Johnny's diagnosis with Coates disease. So having newborn twins, that's a trip. Um,
To put it lightly.
I think that that was probably the hardest period was getting a diagnosis of something that I had never heard of and I didn't know anything about it and I just felt afraid because I didn't know what it meant for Johnny and I was trying to manage postpartum issues myself and um so that initial diagnosis on top of the other things that I was struggling with at that time, it kind of all just created the perfect storm.
Yeah.
Um, Other things that have been difficult, I mean, just the logistics of having to drive 3.5 hours down to Utah to get treatment every 3 months. My husband usually takes Johnny because I'm working full time and they stay in an Airbnb. They go to the hospital really early, about 6:30 in the morning. They report to the hospital. It's basically an outpatient procedure, but so every time he is put under anesthetic, I am worried. And um, we do this about every 3 months just so that he can keep his eye. So that has been difficult, just trying to manage my own anxiety as he goes under anesthesia to receive the treatments for his eye. My husband takes him to the hospital and not me because he's a lot more and doesn't get as anxious as I do.
Well, I think that goes back to this team, right? That you've got strengths in other areas, but that ability to maintain his calm while the procedure specifically is going on, that it's great to play to his strengths there too. Jen, thank you for sharing all of that and for I appreciate that you pointed out, yes, there's the logistical difficulties and there are emotional difficulties too. And all of that, again, it makes up the picture and is part of your story and is part of what your village can help support. I'm curious as we've talked today if there have been any other thoughts that you've had that you would just like to share with us, or if you have any advice for parents who maybe not the exact same, but if they find themselves in a similar situation to you, what would you say to them?
Probably what I said a bit earlier, which is just take it one day at a time. Focus on what you can do today to support your child and try not to worry about what's going to happen in 10 years. Easier said than done. Um, and also I think don't neglect your own self-care as you are trying to care for others. It's that analogy, or it's when you get on the airplane and they say, if the oxygen masks drop, secure your own mask before you put the mask on someone else. I think it's easy to get lost in caring for individuals and to forget to put on your own oxygen mask first. But you can't take care of someone else if you aren't in a good spot yourself. So making sure to prioritize whatever it is that helps you maintain that mental health, as well as um, mental health and physical health are so connected that it's hard to have one without the other. They just seem to be connected.
Yeah, that is great advice. Thank you. Any other thoughts that you wanted to share?
No, I think that was all.
Well, Jen, I just have one last question for you, and that is with this idea of it takes a village. If somebody asked how they can help, what answer would you give?
That's a great question. I think I want to circle back to how we began, which is just build a relationship. That's what life is all about, is relationships. So if you want to help, care about someone enough to build a relationship with them, and you'll know how to help if you have that relationship.
Great advice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us and to again be vulnerable and share that story with us. If anything that Jen has said was helpful to you or you feel like it would be helpful to others, I invite you to like, subscribe, share this with others. If you have any ideas of things that you would like to see in future episodes or people that you would like to see on this channel, please feel free to put that in the comments. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.